Welcome to Wizards of the Tower.
Roleplay.
And in this episode, we're going to be talking about witches in Pathfinder. Welcome to Wizards of the Tower.
Roleplay.
We're going to be talking about witches in the Pathfinder series of games. Now, I know that in Dungeons & Dragons you have Warlock, which is oftentimes referred to as the male form of witch in Legends, but that's actually not true. In old times, the male witch was actually called a wizard, not a witch or a warlock.
In D&D, in 5th edition or whatever, there are no witches.
No, there's warlock.
Okay, but what would be the female equivalent of a witch in 5th edition? Is it just a female wizard?
They don't really have the witch, not as it's defined as Pathfinder does it. The closest thing would probably be a warlock, but it's still far different than the witch in Pathfinder.
Okay. I know there's a lot of it's just nomenclature, but there's a reason that Pathfinder has witches, and we're going to talk about some of that.
Yeah. So let's hit upon a little bit of the description of a witch.
Yeah. Everybody has this classic idea, the Wicked Witch of the West, a pointy hat, and dark clothes, ugly face, kind of like a crone or a hag. That's the classic idea. Of course, a lot of that has been misidentified and seen through the eyes of the patriarchy, so they've been demonized. There's the contemporary images of witchery, I guess, or witchcraft, which is, sort of a lot more benevolent, kind of more magic-based, more relationship-based. You have, Sabrina the Teenage Witch and stuff like that, which is a lot more benevolent. Witches in Harry Potter, that sort of thing. And I think that's one reason why Pathfinder, has kind of this witchy character in it that let people may want to play a witch. And, I have never played a witch. Delaney's played a witch several times.
I've played plenty of witches.
So why would you want to play a witch?
Witches are kind of a totally different stretch from playing a wizard or a cleric or a druid. It's kind of a combination of all those. They have their strengths, they have their weaknesses. You don't necessarily have this whole, why throw a witch into the water and they float like a duck, and why do they float like a duck? Because they're made of wood, and what happens to wood? Well, you burn it. Type of Monty Python witch.
Right. Well, that's the classic idea, but saying the witches in Pathfinder, why would someone want to play a witch rather than a wizard?
They can be very powerful. They have, not only do they have their spells, but they have what they call their hexes. Now, first edition witches had some really great hexes. They had a slumber hex, which was a really powerful sleep spell. Whereas a sleep spell would only affect up to 4 hit dice of character, or monsters. If you had 6 monsters and all 4 of them were 1 hit die, you could affect 4 of them. But if all 4 of them were 4th level, you could only affect 1 of them. A slumber hex could affect any level. And it also would affect anything that could not be slept, like an elf. Where an elf can't be put to sleep, a hex spell would put them to sleep for so amount of rounds.
And that's because elves supposedly don't sleep.
Right.
So slumber can do it.
It's not an area of effect type of spell, so that didn't make it as powerful. They would look at somebody and give them that evil eye or whatever you want to call it, and if you failed your save, you would fall asleep.
Gotcha.
And you would be asleep until somebody woke you up. Now, once somebody woke you up, you couldn't attempt it on them again, nor if they passed their saving throw, you couldn't cast it on them again unless you had certain hex abilities to do it.
Okay.
So it really made them a powerful creature, and then they could fly. You gave them the ability to fly, and
that's true.
At low levels, their fly didn't actually cause them to fly; it actually caused them to feather fall. And then when they got to
that's different.
Right. So when you got to another level, it would cause you to levitate, so you could go up and down.
Okay.
And then once you reached 5th level, then your hex ability could cause you to fly. You could actually fly around.
So when we talk about fly, we're not talking about flying like Superman. We're just talking about flying movement, kind of moving around like this. And
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Because that's if everybody has this idea, it's like I'm going to fly, and you're like, we're out of here.
Yeah, and you can do that
later on. I'm sure. Yeah.
Now
your
is it more like a helicopter? Well, I would assume so, being that it's got the levitation.
Like hovering around.
Right.
Yeah.
They have spells.
Okay.
Their spells are. They have some spells that are kind of wizardry. They have some spells that are kind of clerical.
Mm-hmm.
They have some spells that are kind of druidic. And then they have their own spells. Take a spell like Pustulus, which would cause these boils to break out on an enemy, which could cause them to start stopping in the fight and scratching themselves.
Yeah, there's that.
Which would cause the pusses to break open and cause damage. Or they could summon a swarm of, say, spiders, or vomit a swarm of spiders, which would then rush in and distract the enemy.
So they're kind of a debuff in a lot of ways, debuffing the enemy.
Right, witches are heavily a debuffing.
Okay, they use their magic.
Right, now they also have the ability, if they have the hex, to heal.
Right.
Which saves your cleric. And so they could heal each person in the party one time per day in a 24-hour period if they had the hex.
Okay.
Or they could do a misfortune, which would cause the enemy to have to roll multiple dice on their attacks for one round. So their hexes were very powerful, but their spells were the same.
I know that, like in the games that we've played with you, that a lot of times the misfortune is a pretty good one, because it causes the enemies to have to re-roll things, 3 or 4 times, or what? Not 3 or 4 times. But 2
times. They roll 2d20s and take the lowest.
They got to take the lowest. So a lot of times it really boggles, the attacks or the actions or whatever. Witches also get familiars, don't they?
Yes, they have a myriad assortment of familiars, and they can actually cast spells through their familiars.
Okay.
Now, you don't want to have your familiar die, because if you learn spells from addition for what you gain, and you put those into your familiar, they're like your spell book. If your familiar dies, you would lose those spells. You would only have the spells that you had earned or learned without having to buy or purchase or trade.
Okay.
So it's a thing you want to keep your familiar protected.
Sure.
Our witch in our current campaign lost their familiar.
Yeah.
And has almost lost their familiar many times, but actually lost their familiar.
They had to get a new one and train it.
Right, which means they lost all the spells that they had gained in addition to what they had gotten for their levels.
Yeah.
And then lastly, they have what's called a patron. And their patron is never revealed to them. Their patron is a secret entity that grants them their spells and their abilities.
You say not a god, though.
It could be a god.
It could be, but you say it's like an entity, like a secret entity.
It's a secret entity.
Okay. Could it be a demigod or a powerful something?
Could be a demon or a devil or a face spirit or a ghost.
Okay.
It could be any number of things that the player never really truly knows. Now, they might find out who it is if the DM so wishes.
My goodness.
But the patron is always very secretive, but grants them their spells.
I guess I never really understood how that works. I've never played one, but we never talked about it that much before.
Yeah. Okay. So one of our players, the character who's playing a witch in the current campaign, actually asked us about patrons and using patrons within the game. Now, as patrons are never really truly revealed to the character, they never really know. Now, as a dungeon master or game master, you could do that as you wish. And ways that you could do that would be that the player starts to uncover clues. Now, the witch in our campaign follows the deception path. And when a witch follows a specific patron, that patron grants them bonus spells. And in this case, it grants them invisibility is one of the spells they get.
Okay, yeah.
And I can't think of the other spell that they get at this time.
Now, when you're talking, excuse me, let me interrupt for a second. When you're talking about uncovering clues, do you mean clues to the patron's identity?
Yes.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Now, like I said, our patron for our witch is deception. She the character picked a deception patron.
Right.
And it's been kind of revealed to them who this patron is, but they've kind of been shucking it. I don't think they really truly believe that this patron is it.
I mean, they got invisibility spells, they've got deception spells, that sort of thing, which come in handy.
Very, very much, because invisibility is not typically a spell that a witch gets.
Yeah.
Because they follow the patron of deception, invisibility is one of the free spells that they get.
Okay.
Now, once again, you could uncover clues. The player could uncover clues that who their patron is.
Yeah.
Their patron may have a long-term plan that they're trying to make the witch do that they don't know. And it could be something following who that patron is.
Okay.
So, a patron of deception. Think about that. What would a patron of deception's long-term plan is?
Well, basically to delude or deceive people and get them to perform actions they normally wouldn't do over a long period of time for some kind of a final outcome.
Right.
It could be anything.
Now, the patron, the witch, in this game, there is a character who many believe is the son of a deity.
Right.
In fact, everybody who meets him and becomes friends with him thinks that he is the son of a deity.
Right.
And the witch has been trying to get him to use that in the party's favor.
Yeah,
and he's kind of been reluctant.
He's been very reluctant to do it.
Yeah.
Because he's not a natural deceiver.
No, he's very neutral.
Yeah.
He just wants things to be as they are.
Mm-hmm.
And this character has been trying to get him to deceive people for the party's benefit. Yeah. And he doesn't like that because he doesn't think that that's right. Maybe the patron is in conflict with others. And that is causing the witch to do things that maybe the party may not like. It could bring group, conflict within the group interest of morality.
Well, so when you say conflict with others, you mean like the patron might be in conflict
using
with
them.
Yeah, using them as almost like a foot soldier to sort of wage a war against the minions of another patron.
Yeah.
Maybe in a way like that. I can see that.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
And then, of course, like I said, conflicts in the group interests.
Yeah.
And morality.
Yeah. Well, morality always comes into it. We've done some episodes on that. You know, what is the witch doing? Is the witch doing something that people consider to be bad or evil, or maybe neutral in some senses, but maybe not so neutral in others?
Right.
Yeah.
So then you have to play upon the witch's alignment. In this case, I think our witch is I think I know she's chaotic. Or no, she's
got to be chaotic.
No, she wasn't chaotic, but she should be. She should honestly be.
Okay.
Yeah. Maybe they're tied to a bloodline, and it's tied with family history, and which could lead to quests for the witch.
So a witch's family quest or a family history trying to resolve some sort of question from the past or some kind of event that took place, like something like that.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe the patron has a hidden agenda that's beyond the witch's understanding.
Well, I mean, if the patron keeps themselves hidden, they probably have a hidden agenda or something that they're working on, and then basically the witch, again, is almost like some kind of a foot soldier trying to further that agenda.
Competition with a ritual coven. Now, witches operate out of covens, and they can actually work with hags, which is not typically a good thing.
Well, we had that in our game, where the hags tried to invite our witch character player to join them, and our witch almost did.
Yeah.
Almost did. It was very close.
Yeah, ended up in a big nasty fight.
Yeah, in a big fight against some hags, and they weren't that easy to take care of because hags are powerful. Very powerful.
And there were 3 different kinds of hags that were in that party. And they were destructive.
So that'd be a coven. So would a single individual witch then have conflict with covens who they essentially don't believe in or work with?
Very possible.
Okay.
Very possible.
Interesting. that's kind of a quest line that I would think would be interesting to bring up. Is you have these rival magic users, you know, trying to seek dominance or something like that, and they're just not really working out, but they're fighting each other, and then the unintended consequences that take place against everybody else in the game.
Yeah. Could be their patron is part of a world-altering event that is happening, and maybe they want to side with the bad, or they could be deciding, you know, working for the good.
Well,
or
that's
their own better interest, you know, to gain power in their own.
Yeah, their own best interest. I mean, that's a big, giant world-building plot quest right there. You know, how do you suss all this out and figure out what's happening and how you're being manipulated as a witch character? So my big question would be, like, I know you played witches. Would playing a witch really be kind of beneficial to a party in a sense that they have a lot of these? They come along with a lot of baggage.
They can be.
Yeah.
It all depends upon how the player, number one, wants to create the witch.
Okay.
And what patron they want to select for the spells that they want to, to their additional spells. Like I said, our Witch of Deception has invisibility and a few other things.
Yeah.
Which can be good or bad.
Sure. Well, even they're useful in a D&D sense or a Pathfinder sense. I'm just wondering, I mean, why would someone in a group, especially if you had a paladin in there, why would you want a witch in your group? Or could you even tolerate having a witch in your group? Because you never really know their true motives. They're being manipulated by a patron.
Right. Now, which actually brings us to a campaign that we played in, where I was actually playing two characters. One was a paladin, one was a witch.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, that was in the one that you had a halfling.
Oh.
A little halfling.
Okay.
It was a campaign that never got to go anywhere.
Oh, yeah. The one that just ended up dead. Yeah.
Yeah, one of them that ended up dead.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was actually playing a paladin and a witch.
I remember.
And it was kind of this moral conundrum. You know, the people looked upon the witch as bad, and the paladin's like, she's not bad, she's not evil, she's actually good. She's a good witch. She's working for the benefit of trying to prove things, but yet the world looked at witches in a very bad way.
That's the thing is, you know, they were very suspicious of magic users and witches, of course, and magic users in general, witches, you know, specifically. So.
Yeah, and her initial job was to keep an eye out on the witch.
Yeah.
And the two ended up kind of having a relationship.
I remember that. Yeah, that was too bad that had to end, but it was a complex, kind of clumsy game, and it just wasn't going to really go anywhere.
Well, it was one of those adventures where the DM railroaded the party into certain things,
into trying to
do stuff. Because you know, where there was a bad guy that we attacked and should have died but didn't die and escaped and inflicted a curse upon the witch, and then we had to go someplace to save the witch.
Yeah, I remember that.
So yeah, it was kind of a railroading adventure. But yeah, witches, I love witches. I think they're a blast. In fact, when we were rolling up characters, our player picked a witch, and their first witch died, and they decided to stick with a witch for their second character.
Yeah.
And it's taken them a little while, but they finally learned how to play this witch because they're a 5e player.
Yeah, kind of gotten good at it. Yeah.
You know, with this witch and kind of figured how to do things and use hexes and picked hexes. There's one hex that they picked, which is a really good thing, which if they throw it on the enemy and the enemy fails their saving throw, any damage that enemy does to you, it takes half of it themselves.
That's a good one.
That's a very good hex.
Yeah.
So yeah, witches, you know, they're great.
Okay.
Their patrons, though, you know, how to throw them out there. Those are just kind of a few of the ideas of what you can do to use the patron within the game. Yeah. So Thomas, if you're watching, this one is for you because you asked for that.
Yep.
And it's taken me a while to come up with it, but here you go.
It works.
So anyway, we have a Discord channel. Please come out and join us. We don't charge you to join that Discord channel. You don't have to join a patron. It's pretty basic. You can give us ideas. You can have role-playing out there. Just keep it civil and have fun. But anyway, we hope you like this episode of Wizards of the Tower.
Role play.
And may all your adventures be epic.
And keep on rolling.
Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and spread the word. Thanks, folks.
Thanks, folks.